The last dragon hatchlings in the galaxy were fragile and rare. They were born on a research station floating above a giant, swirling gas planet far from human worlds. Alien medics from several species surrounded the incubators, their long fingers and tentacles moving quickly as they checked readings and adjusted glowing instruments. Despite all their efforts, one hatchling lay very still, its tiny chest barely rising with each weak breath. "This one won't make it," said a tall, blue-skinned medic, his voice low and harsh. His 3 eyes flicked over the creature, scanning the vital signs that blinked in red on the screen. Another alien, with a crystalline body that shimmered in the light, shook his head. "It's too weak. No medicine, no energy fields, nothing can help it." Their words echoed in the cold, metallic chamber. The hatchling stirred slightly, a soft whimper escaping from its tiny mouth. Its scales were dull, pale gray instead of the bright, fiery red of healthy dragons. Its wings, no bigger than a human hand, twitched feebly. The medics exchanged glances of frustration. They had seen many dragons before, and they knew when one was beyond saving. Dr. Elias Kane stepped into the room. He was human, wearing a simple white jacket and carried a small bag of tools. He looked at the hatchling carefully, kneeling beside it. Unlike the aliens, he did not rush to change machines or inject strong medicines. He simply observed, listening to the faint rhythm of its tiny heartbeat. "Let me try," he said softly. His voice was calm, different from the urgent tones of the alien medics. They turned to him, skeptical. "Humans are emotional," one of them hissed. "You cannot save it with soft touches and gentle sounds. This is science, not feelings." Elias ignored the warning. He gently placed his hands near the hatchling, feeling its cold, fragile body. He began to hum a simple tune, soft and low. The sound was quiet, but somehow steady, like a heartbeat of its own. He adjusted the warmth around the creature, making sure it was comfortable without the harsh energy fields the aliens used. Hours passed. The alien medics continued their own treatments, occasionally checking the readings and shaking their heads in frustration. They could not understand why a human would spend so much time on one weak hatchling when they had dozens of others to care for. The hatchling moved slightly as if responding to the soft humming. Its chest rose a little more with each breath. Elias smiled quietly. "That's it, little one. Keep fighting." He fed the hatchling a tiny syringe of nutrient gel, careful not to overwhelm it. The alien medics watched in silence, still doubtful. The station's alarm suddenly rang. A storm on the gas giant below had caused a minor energy surge, and the incubators flickered. The hatchling's temperature dropped slightly and a red warning light flashed. Panic spread among the alien medics. They argued in rapid, high-pitched tones, debating what to do. One suggested a strong energy pulse to stabilize the creature, but the risk was too high. Another wanted to remove it and use a high-tech containment unit, but there were none available. Elias acted quickly. He scooped the hatchling gently from the incubator and wrapped it in a human-made thermal blanket he had in his bag. The hatchling's small body pressed against his hands, weak but alive. He whispered to it constantly, stroking its tiny wings and murmuring encouragement. "I've got you. You'll make it. Just hold on." The storm raged outside, shaking the station. Electrical sparks flew as systems failed and emergency lights flickered. The alien medics were frozen with fear, unsure how to help. But Elias stayed calm. He adjusted the blanket, kept the hatchling warm, and focused on its breathing. Slowly, very slowly, the creature's chest rose more steadily. By morning, the storm had passed. The incubators returned to normal, and the station's energy systems hummed again. The hatchling was still alive, breathing on its own, and its small eyes blinked open. It looked up at Elias, and for a moment, it seemed to recognize him. The alien medics were silent. They had never seen anything like this. Every method they had used had failed, yet the human's simple care had kept the dragon alive. Elias smiled, exhausted but relieved. "You're stronger than anyone thought," he said softly. For the first time, the aliens realized that saving life was not always about technology or advanced medicine. Sometimes it was about patience, attention, and hope. Elias had not given up, and the hatchling had survived against all odds. From that moment, the tiny dragon became a symbol of possibility. Even in the far reaches of the galaxy, life could be saved by one determined heart. And Elias knew this was only the beginning of their journey together. The tiny dragon lay quietly in the human's hands, its small body warm against his touch. Dr. Elias Kane studied it closely. Unlike the alien medics, he did not rely on machines or complicated energy fields. He believed that life needed patience and understanding, not just advanced technology. Every heartbeat mattered, Every breath counted and he refused to give up. Elias gently laid the hatchling in a small containment pod he had prepared. It was lined with soft, human-engineered thermal material that kept the dragon warm without overwhelming it with energy pulses. The aliens crowded around, their tentacles twitching and claws tapping impatiently. "This is useless," one hissed. "The creature is too weak. You are wasting your time." "I am not wasting my time," Elias said calmly. "I am listening. I am watching. That is what this hatchling needs right now." He checked the dragon's weak breathing, counting each rise and fall of its tiny chest. He adjusted its position slightly, making sure its wings were not bent or strained. Then he began to hum a soft, steady tune. It was a simple human melody, quiet and soothing. The dragon's small body twitched as it listened, and for the first time, its chest rose more evenly with each breath. The alien medics exchanged doubtful looks. They had never seen creatures respond to sound or touch in this way. Their treatments were all precise and scientific, but somehow this human approach, gentle, calm, patient, was working. They muttered in their own languages, confused and frustrated. Elias fed the hatchling small amounts of nutrient gel. The syringe was tiny but carefully measured. He had spent years studying different species, learning how to give just enough nourishment without overwhelming their fragile systems. The dragon's mouth opened slowly, and it drank a little, its eyes blinking at him as if it understood that he was trying to help. Hours passed and the hatchling slowly became stronger. Its scales, once pale and dull, now shimmered faintly with a hint of red. Its wings twitched more confidently, stretching slightly as if testing their strength. The alien medics could not believe what they were seeing. All their machines, all their advanced medicines, had failed to save this creature, but a human with nothing but patience and care had made progress. Elias worked through the night, never leaving the hatchling alone. When the station's alarms rang for minor system failures, he adjusted the pod's temperature, checked the oxygen levels and whispered softly to the creature. He stroked its tiny head, talked to it like a friend and carefully monitored its heartbeat. The dragon responded, moving its small claws and making soft chirping sounds. It was the first sign of life they had seen in days. The alien medics tried to intervene. One reached for a high-energy injection, and another offered a complex chemical formula to stimulate growth. Elias shook his head. "No. Too strong. Too fast. This is not the way," he said. "Let it recover slowly. Let it grow at its own pace." The alien stepped back, still skeptical but unwilling to argue further. They had learned from experience that humans sometimes did things differently, and occasionally, surprisingly well. Elias focused on the hatchling, his own hands moving gently, carefully, almost as if he were a conductor guiding an orchestra. Each touch, each hum, each measured feeding was a note that helped the dragon's weak body find its rhythm. Days passed. The hatchling's eyes opened more fully, and it began to make small, curious movements. It lifted its head, turning toward Elias when he spoke. It twitched its wings slightly, testing them, and sometimes nudged his hand as if seeking reassurance. The human smiled quietly. "Yes, that's it. You're doing so well. I am proud of you." The alien medics whispered among themselves. They had never seen this level of connection between a human and an alien creature. Machines and medicines could only do so much. Patience, attention, and empathy could achieve things that technology alone could not. Slowly they began to observe rather than interfere, watching Elias's methods and taking notes, trying to understand what was happening. Elias continued his careful routine. He adjusted warmth, checked vitals, hummed his soft tunes, and fed the hatchling at precise intervals. He taught it slowly to respond, to lift its small head, to open its mouth for nourishment, and eventually, to push against the floor of the pod with its tiny claws. Each day it grew stronger, its scales brighter and its wings more confident. By the end of the week, the hatchling could move more steadily, its tiny body no longer trembling with weakness. It chirped softly, stretched its wings and even nuzzled Elias's hand. The alien medics looked on in quiet awe. They had seen countless creatures fail and die, but this one had survived, and thrived, through the gentle, patient care of a human. Elias knew the battle was not over. The dragon was still small and fragile and challenges lay ahead. But he also knew something important. Patience, hope, and attention could accomplish what machines and technology often could not. The dragon was learning to trust, to grow, and to fight. And for Elias that was the true victory. For the first time he allowed himself a small smile. This hatchling was more than a creature in need, it was a symbol of what humans could do, even in a galaxy filled with advanced alien science. One heart, refusing to give up, could change the fate of a life. and Elias was determined to see this dragon live, no matter what challenges came next. The dragon hatchling had grown a little stronger, but the challenges were far from over. Life on the research station was not easy. The station orbited a massive gas giant, its swirling storms always threatening to disrupt systems and supplies. Every day brought new dangers, and every small step forward for the hatchling required careful attention. Elias Kane never left its side. Each morning he checked the dragon's tiny body, its weak heartbeat, its fluttering wings. He adjusted the thermal blankets and carefully fed it measured doses of nutrient gel. Despite the alien medic's doubts, the hatchling was slowly responding. It chirped softly when it saw him, stretching its wings in tiny hopeful movements. But then came a warning alarm. A plasma storm had formed on the gas giant below, and energy readings on the station began to spike. The incubators flickered and sputtered as the storm's radiation interfered with the systems. The hatchling shivered in its pod. Its body temperature dropped rapidly, and its heartbeat slowed. The alien medics panicked. One of them reached for a high-intensity energy stabilizer, a machine designed to shock creatures back to life. Another tried to prepare a chemical boost that could save the dragon, but there was no guarantee it would work. Their voices rose in anxious chatter, a chorus of fear and urgency. Elias acted quickly. He scooped the hatchling from the incubator and wrapped it tightly in the thermal blanket. The dragon pressed its tiny body against his chest, shivering slightly. He held it close, speaking softly in a steady, calming voice. "It's okay. I've got you. We'll get through this together." The storm shook the station violently. Sparks flew from the walls, and lights flickered as the power system struggled to maintain balance. The alien medics watched helplessly as Elias cradled the dragon, refusing to use their advanced equipment. They could not understand why he trusted his hands and patience over technology. Elias adjusted the blankets, keeping the hatchling warm and protected from the fluctuating energy fields. He monitored its breathing, counting each rise and fall of the tiny chest. He whispered encouragement, telling it to keep fighting, to hold on. Slowly, the dragon's heartbeat began to stabilize. Its body, once trembling uncontrollably, started to regain warmth and strength. Hours passed like this. The storm raged outside, shaking the station and cutting off communications with nearby planets. The alien medics were exhausted, unsure how they could help. Yet they could not deny that the humans' calm, careful methods were working. Every time the hatchling stirred or opened its eyes, Elias's gentle hands had guided it through. As the storm finally began to subside, the hatchling's breathing grew steadier. It made soft chirping sounds, weak but alive, and it nudged Elias's hand as if in gratitude. The human smiled, relieved but careful not to show too much excitement. "You're stronger than anyone thought," he murmured. "We're going to make it through this together." The aliens were silent, a mix of awe and confusion on their faces. Technology had failed where human care had succeeded. Machines could not replace patience, attention, or hope. Elias had shown them that even in the harshest conditions, life could be preserved with persistence and understanding. Over the next days, Elias continued his careful work. He fed the hatchling small amounts of nutrient gel, adjusted the temperature of the pod, and monitored every heartbeat and movement. He taught the dragon to stretch its wings carefully, to lift its head, and to respond to his voice. Slowly, the hatchling began to move more confidently, exploring the small pod with curious motions. The alien medics began to take notes, watching the humans' methods carefully. They had never seen creatures respond to soft sounds and patient care in this way. Their advanced treatments had failed repeatedly, yet the humans' simple touch, voice, and attention had kept the dragon alive and growing. Elias knew the challenges were far from over. The hatchling was still small and vulnerable, and another storm could strike at any moment. Supplies were limited, and the station had only so many medical tools. But he refused to give up. Each day brought small victories, a stronger heartbeat, a brighter eye, a tiny twitch of a wing. By the end of the week, the hatchling could lift its head fully, its wings stretched slightly, and it began to make louder chirping sounds. It had survived the storm and its body was growing stronger. Elias allowed himself a small smile, but he knew the real test was not over. The galaxy was vast and the dangers were many, but he was determined to see the dragon live, no matter what came next. The alien medics, once dismissive, now watched in quiet respect. Elias had taught them something unexpected. That saving life was not only about technology or advanced treatments. Sometimes it was about patience, attention, and refusal to give up. The humans' methods were simple, yet they worked where complex machines had failed. The tiny dragon chirped again, its wings fluttering weakly but confidently. It looked up at Elias as if recognizing him as its protector. He stroked its scales gently, whispering, "We're going to face everything together. You'll grow strong, little one. You'll survive." And in that moment, the human vet and the dragon formed a bond that no storm, no distance, and no obstacle could break. Elias knew the journey ahead would be difficult, but he also knew that they had already survived the greatest test. The storm had not taken them. The hatchling had fought, and with Elias's care, it had won. The hatchling had grown noticeably stronger. Its wings, once fragile as paper, now flexed with more confidence. Its scales, faintly dull when it was born, shimmered with hints of red and gold in the soft lights of the research station. Every day Dr. Elias Kane watched it carefully, amazed at the small progress it made. It was no longer just a fragile creature in need of care, it was beginning to show personality, curiosity, and even trust. Elias spent hours with the dragon. He adjusted the temperature of the pod, fed it carefully measured doses of nutrient gel, and monitored its breathing. But he also spent time simply sitting with it, humming soft human tunes, speaking calmly, and letting it become familiar with his presence. Unlike the alien medics, Elias knew that life was not just about medicine or technology, it was also about comfort, attention, and emotional connection. Slowly the dragon began to respond to him. At first, it would only twitch its tiny wings when he hummed. Then it began to nuzzle his hand when he fed it, pressing its small head against his palm. One day after a particularly long feeding, it lifted its head fully, blinked its bright new eyes, and let out a soft, excited chirp. Elias smiled, his heart swelling with quiet pride. The alien medics watched from a distance, no longer skeptical but curious. They had never seen a creature respond so strongly to one individual. Machines, energy fields, and chemical boosters had all failed. But a human, using simple touch and patience, had awakened life and trust where none seemed possible. Some of the medics whispered among themselves, trying to understand the method. Others simply shook their heads, as if admitting silently that they could not replicate what Elias had done. Elias began to teach the dragon slowly. He showed it how to lift its head, stretch its wings, and even step forward with its tiny claws. The hatchling mimicked his gentle movements, wobbling at first but gradually becoming steadier. Each small success was a triumph. Each flutter of its wings, each chirp of excitement, reinforced the bond between them. One evening, as the station orbited the gas giant in silence, Elias noticed the hatchling staring at him with what seemed like recognition. Its eyes followed his every movement, and it chirped softly whenever he spoke. Elias reached out, and the hatchling nuzzled his hand, curling slightly into his palm. He laughed softly, a sound that echoed warmly in the metallic room. "You trust me now," he said. "And I promise I won't ever let anything happen to you." The alien medics began to record the interaction. They were fascinated by the connection between human and dragon. One of them finally spoke quietly, almost in awe. This bond is unlike anything we have ever seen. Your patience, your care, it is extraordinary." Elias nodded humbly. He did not see it as extraordinary. To him it was simply what life deserved: attention, kindness, and hope. Days turned into weeks. The hatchling continued to grow, its wings stretching further, its chirps louder, and its body stronger. It learned to recognize Elias's voice instantly, responding to his soft hums with gentle movements. The bond was more than comfort. It was trust, respect, and companionship. The dragon no longer trembled with fear or weakness. It had learned to face the world with confidence because Elias had never given up on it. The alien medics began to approach cautiously, observing the humans' methods. Elias welcomed them, showing them how he fed the hatchling, how he monitored its breathing, and how he encouraged movement. Slowly, they realized that his approach could not be fully replicated by machines or energy fields. It was the human connection that mattered, the careful patience that technology could not imitate. One day, as Elias held the hatchling gently, it lifted its tiny wings fully for the first time. They were still small but strong enough to flap carefully. The hatchling chirped loudly, almost as if celebrating its own progress. Elias laughed, tears in his eyes, and whispered, "Yes. You're ready. You're growing strong." The dragon nudged his hand and curled against him, a clear sign of affection and trust. The bond between them grew deeper with every passing moment. Elias knew the hatchling would eventually need to leave the pod and begin exploring the station, but he also knew that the dragon would remember him, trust him, and rely on him. In the vast, cold reaches of the galaxy, they had formed a connection that transcended species, language, and culture. The alien medics, who had once doubted him, now approached with respect. They watched silently as Elias continued his care, realizing that the human's patience and dedication had taught the dragon something no technology could provide: courage, trust, and hope. They began to record notes, studying his methods in silence, understanding that sometimes the simplest gestures could save a life. That night, as the station glided silently above the gas giant, Elias lay next to the hatchling, its tiny body pressed against his arm. He whispered softly, recounting the progress of the week, and the dragon chirped in response. The bond between them was complete, built on patience, care, and unwavering attention. They had survived storms, doubt, and weakness together. Elias knew that challenges still awaited. The dragon would grow, explore, and face dangers that he could not control. But he also knew that the trust and bond they had formed would guide the hatchling through the hardest moments. In that quiet, metallic room, amidst machines and instruments, a human and a dragon had formed a friendship that no storm, no distance, and no danger could break. And in that moment, Elias realized something important. This was more than care, it was a partnership, a mutual understanding, a proof that one human's determination could shape the future of a life in the vast galaxy. The hatchling chirped again, flapped its wings gently, and rested against him, and Elias whispered softly, "We're in this together, little one." Always. The hatchling had grown stronger every day. Its wings were no longer fragile flaps of thin skin. They were firm and flexible, ready to stretch and lift. Its scales glimmered in shades of red and gold, catching the soft lights of the research station. Every movement it made was more confident than the last. Dr. Elias Kane watched quietly, pride filling his chest. The creature that had been so weak, so fragile, was now thriving because of his care, patience, and refusal to give up. The alien medics gathered around, silent for once. They had watched the humans' methods with skepticism at first, but over time they had come to see the results. No machine, no energy pulse, no chemical booster had been able to save this hatchling. It had survived only through persistence, attention, and trust. Even they had to admit that the humans' approach had worked where their advanced technology had failed. Elias gently lifted the dragon from its pod. The hatchling chirped softly, nudging his hand, its small wings stretching instinctively. "You've come so far," he whispered. "And now it's time to fly." The station's observation deck had been cleared for the hatchling's first attempt at flight. It was a small, open space, enough for testing wings without danger of crashing into machinery. Elias set the dragon down carefully, and the hatchling took a cautious step forward. Its tiny claws scraped softly against the metal floor as it adjusted its balance. Elias knelt close, speaking softly. "You can do this. Trust yourself. Trust your wings." The hatchling lifted its head, blinked, and gave a soft, determined chirp. Then slowly it flapped its wings. At first, it barely lifted off the ground, hovering just a few inches above the floor. But with each flap, it rose higher, stronger, more confident. The alien medics gasped. They had never seen anything like it. Their technology could create artificial flight in some creatures, but this was different. This was natural, earned, and powered by life and trust. The hatchling circled the small deck, wobbling slightly but never falling. Elias smiled, his heart swelling. "That's it. You're doing it." The dragon landed gracefully near him, its tiny wings folded neatly. It chirped proudly and nudged Elias's hand as if thanking him. The human laughed softly. "Yes, little one. You did it. You survived, you grew, and now you can fly." Over the next days, Elias continued to train the hatchling, guiding it through longer flights, gentle dives, and careful landings. Each success was celebrated quietly but joyfully. The dragon responded to his voice, his touch, and his soft humming, showing trust and affection at every moment. It was no longer a weak, fragile creature. It was strong, confident, and ready for the world beyond the station. The alien medics began to approach more openly now. They watched Elias's methods closely, taking notes, asking questions, and even attempting small gestures of care. They began to understand something they had never considered before: that sometimes survival depended not on technology, but on patience, empathy, and refusal to give up. Elias's determination had not only saved the hatchling, but it had also taught them a lesson they would never forget. Elias spent time documenting the dragon's progress, but more importantly, he spent time with it. He fed it, guided it, and continued to nurture the trust they had built together. The dragon followed him everywhere on the station, chirping happily and flapping its wings in excitement. Every day it grew stronger, more independent, and more courageous. Finally, the day came when Elias knew the hatchling was ready for the next step, leaving the safety of the station entirely. He prepared a secure transport pod, large enough for the dragon to move freely, and checked every system carefully. The hatchling chirped nervously, its wings fluttering, but Elias gently stroked its head. "You've come so far," he said. "Now it's time to explore the stars. I'll be with you every step of the way." As the pod doors opened, the hatchling leaped into the air, flapping its wings powerfully. It hovered, rose, and then shot upward with surprising speed and skill. The alien medics gasped and cheered, while Elias stood silently, watching the creature he had saved soar confidently. It was a triumph, not just of survival but of human determination, courage, and care. The dragon circled the station once, then returned to hover near Elias, chirping proudly. He laughed softly, tears in his eyes. "You did it, little one. You're free now, but you'll never forget what we've shared." The alien medics, many of whom had doubted him, nodded respectfully. They understood now that humanity could achieve incredible things, not just through technology, but through heart, persistence, and courage. The hatchling eventually took its first long flight beyond the station, soaring above the gas giant, flapping its strong wings and exploring the sky. Elias watched, a quiet pride in his heart. The creature that had once been on the brink of death was now alive, thriving, and ready to face the galaxy. And in that moment, Elias knew the truth. Even in the vast, cold reaches of space, one human heart refusing to give up could change the course of life itself. The hatchling had survived storms, weakness, and doubt because someone had believed in it when no one else would. As the dragon disappeared into the sky, Elias whispered softly, "Go, little one. What? Explore. Fly. Always remember, you are stronger than anyone ever imagined." And somewhere in the stars, the dragon's triumphant roar echoed, a living symbol of hope, courage, and the power of a human who refused to quit.